Christmas time is also synonymous with Kwanzaa. The celebration is not a religious holiday, but rather a cultural one. The week-long festivity begins a day after Christmas. It honors African heritage and highlights the importance of family and community. To tell us more is a man who's played an instrumental role in promoting Kwanzaa celebrations. We're joined by the Executive Director of Ebukhosini Solutions, Baba Buntu. Baba, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, just give us the historic symbolism of Kwanzaa. Where does it stem from?
Okay, so the historic background to Kwanzaa are the numerous indigenous harvest festivals that have been observed throughout the continent for many years, since the beginning of time, basically, because Africa has for a very long time been an agricultural continent, and also in its spiritual observance, giving thanks for the crops, knowing that we can feed our families, knowing that we are safe for the next season, is something that has always been very significant in the African calendar. So Kwanzaa is kind of for lack of a better word, a modernized version or a synthesis of the many festivals. Kwanzaa means the first fruit in the language of Kiswahili. So it really is a celebration of the first crops that comes out of soil. But it also is a celebration not only in a strictly speaking agricultural sense. We also symbolically think of everything we have achieved in a year. There was a new child maybe in the family, somebody got a degree, somebody started a black business. We want to also celebrate because we have a lot of things to be worried and concerned about on this continent. But we also want to celebrate our achievements and use that as a way to charge ahead and see what we need to do next.
Is it an alternative to the conventional or Christmas celebrations?
Not at all. It's not even related. Christmas comes from a particular religious story. Kwanzaa only comes from the indigenous harvest festivals of the continent. Some people tend to think of it as something related to America, and I think the reason for that is that Kwanzaa kind of was conceptualized in the 60s by African American and African researchers, but very much in devotion to the fact that there are people who were stolen from this continent and live other places in the world, and we're looking for ways that they could celebrate and connect with the story that was taken away from them. The reason we have continued to use the word Kwanzaa is that we think it's a good idea. We think that as African people, even if we are on the continent, there's a lot we also lack. I mean, our schools, our governments, our policies do not really represent a very strong Pan-African ideology and practice. So we are also suffering on the continent, and we want to bring that back and remind ourselves of that.
So people can celebrate Kwanzaa and Christmas?
Oh yes, absolutely. You don't have to choose. It's I think what I think is so beautiful about Kwanzaa is that it brings together the whole Pan-African family. So you find people who might be of a Christian background, somebody who's on agnostic background, somebody who's black conscious and have absolutely no religious interest, somebody who's African spiritual, somebody who's Muslim. And we come together. I think it's very important because in this country, we have lived for such a long time, even post-apartheid, being used to that. The way we socialize, it should be with people that reflect exactly who I am. And if you are different, that's a warning sign that I should stay away from you. That's not a power script for what Africa really needs now. We need to come together and see that we actually are facing challenges and can create solutions together.
And now, we hear, obviously, it's the celebration of the harvest, the first fruits and all of that. How do you celebrate? What entails these celebrations? Okay,
so we open on the 26th of December with an opening ceremony. So we start with spirit. We start to give reverence to our ancestors, those who have gone before us. All the way during Kwanzaa celebrations, children have a very central spot. We want to affirm our children. We want to remind them that as much as we have a challenged continent, we also have beautiful opportunities for children to learn their history, to know who they are, to take over the businesses and the economies and the leadership of this continent. And we want to remind them from when they are very young. So children have a very central space. But it's a family-oriented celebration. So we have programs for adults, for young people, for children. So it involves music, it involves poetry, it involves speeches and inspirational messages. During the opening ceremony, we will also have a huge Kwanzaa market, which also becomes very popular because you find that many people come to me, like I wear these clothes every day, and people come to me and say, where do you get this? Yeah. As if they don't know where to get this.
I was about to ask.
If you come to the Kwanzaa market, you are sure to find jewelry, books, everything African-centered.
You've touched a bit about the demographics of the people that celebrate Kwanzaa, but is this about blackness, or can everyone celebrate Kwanzaa?
It is about blackness because it also the need for Kwanzaa comes out of a particular history of a people who have been so challenged in understanding and having access to our story, our cultural identity. That has been such a contentious issue for such a long time. So Kwanzaa is also a way to script ourselves back, to remember that we have something original and genuine to celebrate and mark as African people. So it isn't, and people sometimes put a lot of emphasis on that. Oh, so these people are not invited, these people cannot come. Well, I think actually when you look around in most celebrations, if you're not belonging to that part of that group, you wouldn't necessarily enjoy so much being part of the celebration, because what you will be is a spectator. And Kwanzaa is not about spectation, it's not about visiting, it's about actually feeling it within yourself. So it's really a way to trace your story, and that it's aligned very much to the story we particularly have experienced as African people.
But would it then mean that certain people feel left out in these kind of celebrations?
Yes, I think so, because it speaks to an individual attachment or a reconnection to a story that often is taken out of the main, that is not always told, that often is so hidden and so difficult to get hold of, that this is really a time when we as African people presence ourselves, seeing this is our time, this is us also making a plan for how we're going to deal with the challenges we are facing as African people.
And you talked about going into history and teaching, you know, our children where we come from, where we're going, and all of that. How deep do you go into the history?
Okay, so I think it's important maybe to also see Kwanzaa in relation to the rest of the year, because as Ebukosini Solutions, this is not something we do for 7 days and then we walk away from it. It kind of becomes a heightened moment of what we do throughout the year. We work with children, we work with youth, we work with communities around understanding African history, but not just talk about the past. We do it so that there can be an inspiration to do more and work more and more, be more practical in our Pan-African pursuit, solving the challenges of the continent. So during Kwanzaa, maybe it's not always as deep as it becomes throughout the year, but what creates depth around it is that children also really gravitate towards meeting children from maybe other African nationalities. We use the languages of Africa, we use the songs of Africa, and through a playful and entertaining way, children become conscious of who they are. They start to see, oh, I come from an incredible legacy. I come from a great... Who am I to doubt myself? Who am I to think I'm ugly or unwanted or unnecessary? So I think it's a moment of pride. It's a moment of starting to believe in yourself and your people. One of the principles of Kwanzaa is faith. And faith not only in the religious sense, but faith in our people, faith that we can lead. Because when you look at the continent right now, it's easy to doubt our continent. It's easy to feel depressed and just like, can we really get it right? So Kwanzaa becomes that push that we can do this. We are capable. We have the resources. We have the strength. We just need to work a little bit harder to get it right.
And how do we learn more about Kwanzaa? How can we access information? Just to give us an idea of the meaningfulness of these celebrations.
Right. Well, in the South African sense, we have a Facebook page, Kwanzaa South Africa, where you can learn more about how Kwanzaa is celebrated here. As I said earlier, some people associate it maybe with African Americans more than continental Africans. And for us, it's reclaiming a festival that started here. We don't look so much to America, we look distinctly to South Africa and the African continent. So our way of celebrating, our way of accentuating this is very deeply rooted in a South African reality and an African reality. So you can access information on our Facebook page. There's also numerous YouTube videos and pages. But I think people in the diaspora have been better at promoting Kwanzaa. So you'll find a number of pages that maybe speak directly to Africans in America or the Caribbean or in Europe.
And this year specifically, what are we doing?
So this year we have a theme which is rebuilding the village, empowering our children. And it comes from the notion that we say it takes a village to raise a child. But we feel that many parents do not sense this village. They don't realize or they don't get to feel what this village is, because marriage and raising your children, especially in urban areas, but I think increasingly also in rural areas, have become a very individual, domestic,
Yes.
between two parents or one single parent maybe even. And this mysterious village that's supposed to be there, that you're supposed to offload your burdens, might not even be there. So what does that say, and what do we do? How do you co-parent in a culture that maybe has become very individualistic, where you don't have access to other people that can guide you, elders that can give you advice? And maybe also a lot of parents that we work with also ask, how do I work with my child when it's exposed to so much white supremacy, so much racism, so much things that downplay the pride and the importance of an African child? And that's what we want to, we're actually not coming in with all the answers. We want to ask the question and presence that and say, are we prepared to sacrifice more, to work together, to also raise our children together, to recreate that village?
Well, that was Executive Director of Ebukhosini Solutions, Baba Buntu.